Well, for now on we can't really call them negotiations because they're written messages that go back and forth for the most part. But sometimes messages are accompanied with verbal statements to the Pakistanis, but that's as far as it goes. But Iran has brought that to an end, and it will not continue with this process because of the genocidal attacks in Lebanon and uh, the statements coming out of uh, Palestine, occupied Palestine, that they want to bomb the city of Beirut in order to get revenge for um, the punishment that they've received on the battlefield from Hezbollah. They want to get revenge and, of course, bomb people's homes and apartment blocks. So the Iranians said if that is going to happen, then negotiations are useless. These are violations of the ceasefire and it's not acceptable. In addition to that, the Iranian armed forces have warned Israelis in northern Palestine to leave because they could be in danger. And also, there's a possibility that Ansarullah in Yemen, that they will make some moves with regards to the Red Sea and the Bab el Mandab. So things are heating up very fast thanks to Netanyahu.
So it sounds like we're on the verge of war again.
Well, there is war already. They're carrying out genocidal attacks across Lebanon. They're flattening cities. And it's amazing how the Europeans and the West, with how they used to pretend that they supported human rights and all, then they just let this killing machine carry out genocide everywhere. It just shows that the Europeans are the most, and these Western elites, they're the most uncivilized of leaders across the world, and they should be shunned. But as the genocide in Gaza is ongoing, and we shouldn't forget that, and of course we shouldn't forget Cuba that's being starved. But there is another genocide beginning in Lebanon and ethnic cleansing in southern Lebanon. The Israeli regime is wiping out family after family and destroying village after village and now bombing city after city. And the Iranians are saying enough is enough. So there is an ongoing war. There's also a siege warfare going on. The Americans have blockaded the Strait of Hormuz. So uh, which is a double-edged sword. It's destroying the global economy and it's also putting pressure on the Iranian economy. So siege warfare in the Gulf of Oman and the hot war in Gaza and Lebanon. Yeah, I think we're very close to a major regional war.
I'm not sure if you caught this, but there was an interview that Donald Trump had recently with Fox News. He was interviewed by his daughter-in-law, Laura Trump, and it actually slipped out, like in that interview, where he said we shouldn't have been in Iran. I'm not sure if you saw that, but he started talking about Iraq first, and then he goes on to say we shouldn't have been in Iran, and then says, but they can't have a nuclear weapon. It's again, they're still using that excuse. It's laughable at this point in time. But do you think that Donald Trump at this point in time realizes that there's no easy way out of this?
I'm sure he knows. There's no doubt that he knows. I mean, even though he's being misled by the Mossad and by these Israeli forces who've surrounded him, but it's almost impossible for him not to know what is happening to the global economy and how close we are to catastrophe. We see senior oil um, experts in major corporations saying that the month of June is going to be quite decisive if this continues. And even if it doesn't continue, even if there is miraculously some sort of agreement, which I don't see anything on the horizon, but even if there is an agreement today, hypothetically, uh, they're saying that things are going to get bad in June and worse in July and it'll be terrible in August but every day that this situation continues, it's only going to intensify the crisis. I find it impossible to believe, almost impossible, not impossible, but almost impossible to believe that he does not know that things are bad.
You mentioned Netanyahu and Beirut, and I feel as though Donald Trump is stalling with these fake negotiations to allow Benjamin Netanyahu to seize more land in Lebanon. It seems like our attention is focused on Iran and the Strait of Hormuz. And while that's happening, I keep seeing these images of Israel carpet bombing southern Lebanon, again, trying to steal more and more land. Now he publicly says, I mean, Beirut, like that's a world renowned city. It's not like it's just this, Beirut is not like a battlefield, for example. And just publicly putting that out there, they're just taking more and more land. And part of me feels as though that's what the real plan is, to just stall as long as possible and allow Israel to take more land in Lebanon. And the crazy thing about it is, like, what's happening in Lebanon, most Western corporate media isn't even talking about it.
No, no, the corporate media is fully complicit. Look, Sabrina, in Gaza, the West supported the genocide. Of course, we all know that. Western media supported the genocide. They tried to look away as much as possible, to lie and about like beheaded kids and the fake rape allegations. And then they tried to justify the strikes. And then whenever there would be massacres, and we'd see them on a daily basis, like now in Lebanon, they would say, well, we're not there on the ground and we can't confirm anything. Well, in Lebanon, Western media is very much on the ground. They've been there for since before I was born. Beirut has always been a center for Western media. And they all know exactly what's going on, but they don't want to report the truth. In fact, you'll see them say Hezbollah strongholds. Like when then you look at the images on social media, you won't see it in Western media, but you'll see like families slaughtered. And but Western media will try to. I mean, the same journalists that are in Beirut, they're completely complicit in all this. They want to help the Israelis get away with genocide. And I've spoken to two of them at length a while back, not recently. And I complained to them. I said, in your report, you say Hezbollah strongholds, and you know this is not true. These are neighborhoods. Your fixers and your drivers and your producers live in these areas. And they say, well, I didn't write this. This was like the editor or whatever. Both said the same thing, literally. And I said, no, you're complicit. Your name's on this. You're partner in crime. You're genocidal. You're a bunch of murderers. You and the others in Beirut. So yeah, it doesn't matter if the point is, it doesn't matter if Western media is present, as in Lebanon, or absent, as in Gaza. They will allow ethno-supremacism to reign supreme. They will allow them to slaughter the Amalek, whether they're in Gaza or in Beirut or in Sur or in Ceuta, it doesn't matter. And and the Iranians, though, they're going to stand up to this. If we have to go back to war, we'll go back to war. We cannot allow the Americans and the Israelis to get away with genocide.
Absolutely. Speaking of war, so it was reported, and I want to get a little bit more information about this, but it was reported that there were strikes in Kuwait, I guess on the U.S. military bases just recently overnight. Iran attacked those U.S. military bases. From what I understand, there were a number of social media posts where Kuwait was saying we are under attack. And the way this was also framed was if Iran was just basically carpet bombing Kuwait, right? Not as if Iran was targeting those U.S. military bases. I believe this was also apparently another retaliatory attack. I want to hear a little bit more about that, what's going on with the Kuwait situation.
Trump is carrying out provocative attacks near the Strait of Hormuz, on the islands, on Iran's shores, on the mainland, and in one case, he murdered 4 young Iranian sailors just a few days ago, and they were in Iranian territorial waters, very close to the Iranian shore, in fact. And they said that they were trying to, they were putting mines in the strait, but they weren't even there. They were in Iranian territorial waters. Why would they put mines in Iranian territorial waters? So it was a provocation, and they've been doing it many times. But when they murdered these four young men and their families are in mourning, the Iranians decided to retaliate. So they struck the U.S. base in Kuwait, and apparently a number of contractors, American and European, were killed, and some drones and equipment was destroyed, and a number of U.S. soldiers were injured as well. But this is all in retaliation. But Kuwait, they have nothing to complain about, nor does the Emirates, nor does Qatar, Saudi Arabia, or Bahrain. The Americans are using their territory to attack us. So they are a part of this war. And no matter how much they nag and complain or pretend that they're neutral, it's not going to work. If the war is reignited, Iran will destroy what's left of the U.S. bases, and Iran will also destroy their critical infrastructure if Iran's critical infrastructure is targeted.
I am very surprised that the U.S. did not evacuate those bases, because last time they did, last time when we had like that 30-day war, they did alert all of those U.S. bases that the personnel they needed to evacuate. I find it strange that there was no warning this time, given that there was already just recently a retaliatory attack on a base in Kuwait. It's very surprising to me that they did not evacuate those bases still yet.
Well, as you know, after the ceasefire, after the 39 days or so of war and the ceasefire, the United States began bringing in more troops and more equipment, and many of them are ground troops. So the United States, where can they put them? A lot of them are in civilian buildings in these five countries, and thus making them further complicit. If there's war, Iran will have to strike. But some of them are in these bases because it's really, really hot right now. The weather in these Arab countries in the Arabian Peninsula is very hot, and near the coast, it's extremely humid. And so the U.S. forces in these countries, they're having a really tough time. I'm sure it's not good for morale or those who are on the ships. It's not like it's like here in Tehran, the summer it can at the height of summer it can get up to 39 degrees Celsius. Over there, it's hotter and it's humid. It's intolerable. So the American soldiers are in a tough situation, and much of those bases have been destroyed.
They've also been trying to downplay the number of casualties of U.S. troops and contractors too. For those who are not aware, I believe that number is a lot higher than what they said it was. And they're still trying to send troops over there now. And this is what we were warning people about, that I think for a second, people may have forgotten about Kuwait, because a lot of the, I guess, war conflict involved the UAE, and we heard about, of course, Qatar. They were more vocal about this. Bahrain was more vocal, and I kind of forgot about Kuwait for a second. But they are just as complicit. So the U.S. military is attacking Iran from those bases in the other Gulf states. And then when Iran retaliates and strikes them, we are being told that Iran is just bombing Kuwait.
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly how it works. Just like in Lebanon, just like in Gaza, wherever the Israelis. I mean, this war is all about Israel. I mean, the American soldiers that are in Kuwait, they're there because Netanyahu wants them there. They're in the Emirates because the Zionists want them there. Joe Kent, in his resignation letter, made that clear. We all know that. He said at the beginning of the war, when he resigned, and he was a Trump appointee, he said that this is not about Iran's nuclear program. They're not making a bomb. This is not about Iran being a threat to the United States. They're no threat to the United States. This is because this war is due to the Zionist lobby and the Israeli regime. And so the global economy is now heading towards catastrophe and swiftly moving towards catastrophe because of Netanyahu, because of the Zionists, whether they're in the United States or whether they're in Palestine.
You mentioned that Ansar Allah could close the Red Sea. Who would be impacted by that? Just for those who are not aware.
That would increase the crisis over fuel because the super tankers, the large tankers, can only go through the Bab al-Mandab to get oil from Saudi Arabia. The smaller ships can go through um, the Suez Canal, and if they want to go to Asia, they'd have to go all around Africa. So if the Bab al-Mandab is closed, global trade will be severely affected. Trade will have to go around Africa at a time when the fuel for ships has gone through the roof, the price. So the price would go even higher, and the shortage of oil will increase, and other goods that are produced by Saudi Arabia that they can export through the Red Sea. So it will be very bad. It will make a very, very bad situation even worse. And we are already very close to a global economic meltdown. It's over 3 months now, and the U.S. and other countries are all depleting their strategic reserves. And the belief is that the strategic reserves in all countries except for maybe China, that they will literally finish by the beginning of July, some sooner. But the crisis could hit before then, because when it's clear that there's not going to be any more that the strategic reserves are finishing, and that there's not going to be an agreement, then that's when the price of energy will go through the roof. But even if there is a deal, and I don't see anyone anywhere on the horizon, as I said earlier, this crisis is going to get very bad, because it'll take months for energy and petrochemicals to get to the markets from the Persian Gulf. And if there's war and more destruction of the oil and gas installations, then I think we have a global economic depression significantly worse than the 1930s on the horizon. Not on the horizon, right in front of us, probably within the next couple of months.
Yeah, it's really scary. I don't think enough people realize what we've gotten ourselves into,
Yeah, I think
economically.
it's very scary. I think it's very scary. I mean, it's really bad.
I want to ask about the leadership at this point in time. There was a report from Fox News, and again, I don't know how true this is, but there was a report from Fox News that the president of Iran tried to resign, and that the IRGC took over, has taken over. I know how Fox News can be, so we're trying to figure out like what is going on there. Is the president of Iran, is he feeling some type of way? Is he willing to or wanting to hand over leadership to someone else? How much truth is there to this?
There's no truth. This came from a report from a media outlet called Iran International. Iran International has been at times funded by Saudi Arabia and by the Israelis, and sometimes by both. Very well funded. It is even less credible than Axios. So that's how bad it is. I never even look at it. It's a waste of time. So they reported that he's resigning because they're carrying out psychological warfare against Iran, and then the Western media picks it up. But Iran International has nothing to do with Iran. It's a Western agency. It's a Western outlet for propaganda.
This is why you tweeted, do not follow Iran International. I saw it briefly last night and I was like, oh, I wonder what that's about. This is why you said, because they're on X for people who are not aware.
That's right. Iran International and Axios. I've said both. Axios is also just psychological warfare, and every time. I mean, they do the bidding of the White House, and every time they announce that a ceasefire, we're almost at a ceasefire to bring down the price of oil. Right before it, we hear that huge amounts of money have been moved around in the stock exchange or in the oil market and so on. So the White House, their people, uh, right before Axios makes an announcement, they do what they need to do, and then after the announcement, you see they make hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah, Axios has been very troubling. They did this under the Biden administration too, during with the genocide in Gaza, and they
That's
tried to
right.
convince people that Biden was angry with Netanyahu and did ask for all those things were false. He didn't ask for a ceasefire. He wasn't mad at Benjamin Netanyahu, but they kind of get out there in front of it to tell everybody, to basically make people believe that you should have hope for your leadership because they actually are hearing you and they understand where you're coming from. But it's all just lies. I know Max Blumenthal has like debunked a lot of those articles.
Yeah. I mean, so Axios and Iran International, they're just not worth even looking at.
I hear you. So what do you think is going to happen next, Professor Marandi? Obviously, again, like it's clear that the talks seem to be over, or what little there was of it at that point in time. I do believe that the U.S., it appears they may have already started to do this, that the U.S. military is going to strike Iran again. It seems like they tried to shoot down some of those drones that were coming towards Kuwait, but I think there's going to be another attack here from the United States. And that, leaves the question, what comes next?
I think that if the Israeli regime doesn't back down, that we are going to have an expanded war, but it's going to be different from the last 30, the 39-day war. This one is going to escalate much faster, and it's going to be much broader. In other words, it's going to be a regional war. Ansar Allah will be deeply involved. The Iraqi resistance will be much more deeply involved.